No one could imagine it. This small woman had just given the most terrifying enemy of the universe an antibiotic injection, and within a day, the entire galaxy was obeying her. The Cathara had dominated the alliance of 17 star systems for centuries, standing nearly 3 meters tall, covered in hard scales, with 4 powerful arms and the ability to coordinate hunts using infrasonic waves below the threshold of hearing. They were the undisputed apex predators of known space. For hundreds of years, civilized worlds had maintained an uneasy peace by paying tribute, precious minerals, and advanced technology to avoid being slaughtered. No species dared challenge their supremacy. Until they met Dr. Elena Vasquez. Elena stared through her microscope at the bacterial sample, cursing under her breath. The environmental controls on the research vessel, Curiosity, had malfunctioned again, causing her extremophile cultures to grow far more aggressively than intended. At 35, with a doctorate in cosmic biology, specializing in extremophile microorganisms, she had expected better equipment. The Terran Science Council had promised state-of-the-art facilities for this expedition, but as usual, the budget had been cut at the last minute. "Coffee module still broken?" asked her assistant, sliding a cup of something dark and suspicious-looking across the lab table. Elena grimaced at the offering. "I don't think that qualifies as coffee anymore. More like liquid carbon with aspirations." She pushed it away and returned to her microscope. "These heat-loving bacteria have colonized the ventilation system. If we don't isolate them soon, they'll—" The ship shuddered violently, throwing Elena against the wall. Red alert klaxons blared throughout the vessel. "What now?" she muttered, picking herself up. The intercom crackled with the captain's voice, tight with fear. "All personnel. This is not a drill. A Cathara warship has just appeared in our sector. They're demanding to board for assessment. Do not resist. I repeat, do not resist." Elena had heard of the Cathara. Of course, everyone had. The nightmare predators that had subjugated hundreds of worlds. But she had never expected to encounter them personally. Her research was supposed to be on an isolated route, far from the main trade corridors, where Cathara typically collected their tribute. "Assessment?" she asked. But the question died on her lips as the air in front of her shimmered with an eerie blue light. A displacement field. Some kind of instantaneous transportation technology, far beyond anything humans possessed. 3 towering figures materialized in her lab. Their scale-covered bodies dwarfed her, making the laboratory seem suddenly claustrophobic. 4 muscular arms extended from each torso, ending in clawed hands that could tear through steel. Their elongated heads housed rows of teeth and eyes that gleamed with predatory intelligence. Elena's assistant shrieked and cowered behind the sample storage unit, but she merely stared up at the intruders with annoyance. "Really?" she said, placing her hands on her hips. "You couldn't have waited 5 minutes? I'm in the middle of containing a potentially ship-wide bacterial contamination." The lead Cathara, distinguished by elaborate scarring along its neck scales, tilted its head, clearly not expecting this reaction. The universal translator on its belt emitted a gravelly voice. "Human female. You will accompany us for assessment. Resistance is futile." "Oh, Elena rolled her eyes. "Fine. But when this ship becomes a floating petri dish of extremophile bacteria, don't blame me." She carefully sealed her microscope slides and tucked them into her lab coat pocket. "Let's get this assessment over with. I have actual work to do." The central Cathara reached for her with one enormous clawed hand. Before she could protest, the displacement field enveloped them both, and the familiar surroundings of her laboratory vanished. The instantaneous transition left Elena disoriented. When her vision cleared, she found herself in a vast chamber with high ceilings and angular, metallic walls. The space dwarfed anything on the Curiosity, extending at least 50 meters in each direction. Cold, Blue-tinged lighting created menacing shadows along the scaled walls. "Welcome to the 7th Brood warship," the Cathara escort announced. "You will be questioned to determine your species' continued utility." Elena glanced around, noting that everything was built to accommodate beings much larger than humans. Charming decor, very pointy. "Silence," the guard growled. "Our brood leader will determine your worth." They marched her through corridors that seemed designed to intimidate, with jagged architectural elements and surfaces that resembled hardened scales. Other Cathara warriors they passed turned to stare at the small human in their midst, some making low, rumbling sounds that her translator couldn't interpret. After several minutes, they arrived at what appeared to be a command center. Dozens of Cathara operated various stations, though Elena noted their technology seemed strangely inconsistent. Some elements were far beyond human capabilities, while others appeared almost primitive. The escort pushed her forward until she stood before a raised platform. "Wait here for Brood Leader Zdar." Minutes passed. Elena's scientific curiosity gradually overcame her initial fear as she studied the Cathara's physiology from a safe distance. Their respiratory rate seemed unusually high for creatures of their size, and their skin had a dull sheen that, to her trained eye, appeared slightly unhealthy. Finally, a side door opened, and several Cathara entered, moving with evident deference around a central figure. This Cathara was even larger than the others, with elaborate markings across its scale-covered body and what appeared to be ceremonial armor adorning its massive frame. But what immediately caught Elena's attention was the leader's physical condition. Even from a distance, she could see that something was wrong. The creature's breathing was labored, its movements stiff and careful, and there was a grayish tinge to the normally iridescent scales. The escort beside her bowed deeply. "Brood Leader Zdar, we present the human for assessment." Zdar approached slowly, towering over Elena. Up close, the signs of illness were even more apparent. The Cathara leader's eyes were cloudy, and there was a distinct odor emanating from its body, one that Elena, with her microbiological training, immediately recognized as the smell of infection. "Human," Zdar rumbled, the translator converting the infrasonic elements of its speech. "Your vessel trespasses in Cathara hunting grounds. Explain your purpose." Elena was about to deliver a sarcastic response when the massive alien suddenly swayed, catching itself on a nearby console. The other Cathara immediately looked away, as if acknowledging their leader's weakness was taboo. "Are you all right?" Elena asked, professional interest overriding caution. The question seemed to infuriate Zdar. "Do not presume to show concern. Prey species. You will answer—" The sentence ended in a fit of rasping coughs that shook the leader's entire frame. Elena stepped forward instinctively. "You're sick. I'm a biologist specializing in microorganisms. Maybe I can help." The gathered Cathara hissed threateningly, but Zdar raised one arm for silence. "You claim healing knowledge." "I claim scientific knowledge," Elena corrected. "And from what I can observe, you're suffering from some kind of systemic infection. How long have you been ill?" Instead of answering, Zdar collapsed to one knee, breathing heavily. The other Cathara moved forward in alarm, but maintained a respectful distance. One of them, with elaborate markings on its chest armor, spoke urgently to Zdar in their native language before addressing Elena. "The brood leader suffers from the wasting curse. Our healers have failed to lift it." "Curse?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like superstition, not medicine. Let me examine him." "Her," the translator corrected. "Brood leader Zdar is female." "Let me examine her then," Elena amended. "I might be able to identify what's really causing her symptoms." A heated discussion broke out among the Cathara officers. Elena caught fragments about prey species, contamination, and sacred healing rites. Finally, Zdar silenced them with a pained growl. "Take me to the healing chambers," she commanded. "Bring the human." Elena found herself escorted through more towering corridors until they reached a section of the ship with distinctly different architecture. The harsh metallic surfaces gave way to smoother contours, and the lighting took on a greenish-blue cast. Strange symbols adorned the walls, and there was a pervasive smell of unfamiliar herbs and chemicals. The central chamber contained what appeared to be a ceremonial bed, surrounded by equipment that seemed more ritualistic than medical. Robed Cathara moved about, preparing various substances in bowls and reciting what sounded like prayers or incantations. Star was carefully helped onto the bed, her massive frame dwarfing it despite its size. The lead robed figure, clearly some kind of healer, approached Elena with evident hostility. "The brood leader honors you by allowing your presence, human, but do not interfere with the sacred healing rituals." Elena observed as the healers began their work, applying glowing paste to Star's scales and waving burning herbs that filled the room with pungent smoke. The rituals were elaborate and clearly deeply ingrained in their culture. But to Elena's scientific eye, they were doing absolutely nothing to address what was clearly a progressive bacterial infection. After watching for several minutes, she could no longer contain herself. "This isn't helping her at all. You're treating symptoms, not the cause." The head healer turned on her furiously. "You dare question our ancient ways? The wasting curse has afflicted our kind for generations. Only the sacred purification can hope to lift it." "And how's that working out for you?" Elena asked pointedly, gesturing to Star's deteriorating condition. "Your leader is dying from what appears to be a systemic bacterial infection, not a curse. And all this smoke and ceremonial nonsense is probably making it worse." The chamber fell silent, the Cathara staring at her in shock at her audacity. One of the warriors moved forward menacingly, but Star raised a trembling hand. "Let her speak," the brood leader wheezed. "Our methods have failed." Elena approached the bed, pulling a compact medical scanner from her lab coat pocket. "May I?" she asked, showing the device to Czar. The brood leader nodded weakly. Elena ran the scanner over Czar's body, focusing on areas where the scales seemed most discolored. The readout confirmed her suspicions. A massive bacterial infection had spread throughout Star's system, a variant of Streptococcus that had adapted to Cathara physiology. "You have a bacterial infection," she explained, showing the readout to Star. "These microorganisms have entered your bloodstream and are affecting multiple organ systems. It's not magic or a curse. It's biology." The head healer hissed. "Blasphemy! The wasting curse is sent by the great hunter when we fail to honor the sacred hunting traditions." Elena ignored him, addressing Star directly. "I can help you. I have broad-spectrum antibiotics in my medical kit that should be effective against this type of infection. It won't be instant, but you should see improvement within hours." Star's clouded eyes studied Elena for a long moment. "If you can cure what our greatest healers cannot, what do you ask in return?" Elena hadn't expected the question. "I'm a scientist. Helping you helps me understand Cathara physiology and this particular bacterial strain. That's payment enough. Plus, not being eaten or whatever you normally do to humans would be nice." A sound emerged from Star that the translator rendered as laughter, though it quickly devolved into coughing. "Granted. Proceed, human healer." The head healer and his assistants protested vehemently, but Star silenced them with a gesture that, even in her weakened state, brooked no argument. Elena withdrew her emergency medical kit from another pocket. As a field biologist often working in remote locations, she always carried basic supplies. The antibiotics she had were designed for human use, but her scanner indicated they should be effective against the Cathara infection with adjusted dosing. "I need to take a tissue sample," she told Star, preparing a small extraction device. "This will sting a bit." Star nodded, and Elena carefully took a sample from one of the infected areas. Using her portable analysis equipment, she confirmed the bacterial strain and calculated the appropriate antibiotic dose based on Star's massive body weight. "This will be an intramuscular injection," she explained, preparing the hypodermic. "The dose is adjusted for your size and metabolism." The Cathara around her watched in stunned silence as she approached their leader with the injection. To their warrior culture, the sight of a tiny human approaching their mighty brood leader with a needle must have seemed absurd, even sacrilegious. Elena found a suitable injection site and swabbed it with antiseptic. "This may hurt a bit," she warned, before administering the dose. Star didn't flinch, though the nearby healers looked horrified at the procedure. "That's it for now," Elena said, stepping back. "The antibiotics will need time to work. I'd recommend a second dose in 12 hours. And you need fluids, lots of them, to help flush the toxins from your system." Star nodded weakly. "It will be as you say." She turned to one of her officers. "Provide the human with anything she requires. Her word regarding my treatment is final." The pronouncement sent shockwaves through the assembled Cathara. A prey species, giving orders regarding the care of a brood leader? It was unprecedented. Elena spent the next several hours monitoring Star's condition, taking regular readings with her scanner and adjusting the treatment plan accordingly. She instructed the Cathara on proper hydration techniques and basic infection control measures, though they regarded her instructions with varying degrees of skepticism and resentment. 6 hours after the initial treatment, Zatar's fever began to subside. By 12 hours, when Elena administered the second dose, the infected areas had begun to dry and heal. The brood leader's breathing eased, and her eyes regained some clarity. The transformation was remarkable. By the time 24 hours had passed, Star was sitting up, consuming nutrition, and speaking in a much stronger voice. The Cathara crew regarded Elena with a mixture of awe, gratitude, and lingering suspicion. "The wasting curse is lifting," the head healer announced, trying to maintain his authority. "Our rituals, combined with the humans' assistance, have pleased the great hunter." Elena snorted. "It wasn't a curse. It was Streptococcus cathari, a bacterial infection, and it responded to antibiotics, not rituals." Star silenced the healer's angry response with a gesture. "The human speaks truth. Our traditions failed. Her science prevailed." The brood leader's gaze fixed on Elena with new respect. "You have given me life when death seemed certain. The seventh brood owes you a blood debt." Elena was about to downplay the achievement when the chamber door burst open. A Cathara warrior entered and knelt before Star. "Brood leader, forgive the interruption. Word of your recovery has spread. The third and fifth brood leaders request immediate audience. Their ships have just arrived." Star straightened, strength visibly returning to her massive frame. "They come to witness my weakness, thinking to challenge for dominance." She turned to Elena. "Does your treatment allow me to receive them?" "You're stable but not fully recovered," Elena cautioned. "You should rest for at least another day." Star made a dismissive gesture. "Politics allows no such luxury. I must show strength." She rose to her full height, towering over everyone in the room. "You will accompany me, human healer. The other brood leaders must see the source of my renewed strength." Before Elena could protest, she found herself escorted to what appeared to be a formal reception hall. The scale was immense, with a ceiling that must have been 15 meters high, and walls adorned with what looked disturbingly like trophies from hunts, including specimens from various intelligent species. 2 new Cathara entered, each surrounded by their own retinue of warriors. They were as imposing as Star, with distinctive scale patterns and elaborate armor. Their expressions, if Elena was reading alien facial cues correctly, showed shock at seeing Star standing to receive them. "Brood leader Qatar! Brood leader Matar!" Star's voice boomed with renewed strength. "You arrive unannounced in my territory." The one identified as Qatar recovered first. We received reports of your illness. The Brood Council expressed concern. As you see, such concern was unnecessary, Star replied. Thanks to this human. She gestured to Elena. All eyes turned to Elena, who suddenly felt very small among these towering predators. I just treated a bacterial infection, she said, trying to sound professional rather than intimidated. Standard medical procedure. Mitar, the other brood leader, approached, studying Elena intensely. We have heard rumors. The wasting curse strikes many in our fleets. Our healers perform the sacred rites, yet warriors still die. The massive Cathara suddenly dropped to one knee before Elena, an action that caused gasps among all present. If you have conquered the curse, human, I request your aid for my brood as well. Elena blinked in surprise. You have the same infection? My second commander lies dying, Mitar confirmed. The curse has taken many of our strongest. It's not a curse, Elena repeated. It's a bacterial infection that requires antibiotics. I have limited supplies, but I can examine your sick and prepare treatment protocols. Tar stepped forward as well. My brood also suffers. Many warriors waste away despite the healer's efforts. Elena realized she was facing an epidemic. This infection seems widespread among your species. I'll need proper facilities, more supplies, and samples from multiple patients to create an effective treatment plan. Star raised her hand for silence. The human shall have whatever she requires. The seventh brood's medical facilities are at her disposal. Send for your sick warriors. Within hours, Elena found herself in the midst of a full-scale medical crisis. Warriors from 3 different broods were brought to the ship, all showing various stages of the same infection. She worked tirelessly, examining patients, taking samples, and administering her dwindling supply of antibiotics to the most critical cases. The Cathara watched her work with growing reverence. Here was a tiny human, a member of a species they had considered barely worth noticing, except as occasional prey, performing what seemed like miracles. Warriors who had been given up for dead began to recover under her care. Word spread quickly. By the second day, ships from 2 more broods had arrived. By the third day, the space around Star's warship was crowded with Cathara vessels, all carrying warriors afflicted with the wasting curse. Elena had to improvise. She set up a makeshift laboratory in the Cathara medical chamber, teaching the more scientifically inclined among them basic microbiological techniques. She synthesized more antibiotics using the ship's chemical fabrication systems, which were surprisingly advanced despite the Cathara's reliance on ritual in medical matters. The most difficult challenge wasn't technical but cultural. The Cathara healers resisted her methods, clinging to their traditional practices. Elena found herself engaged in heated debates about germ theory versus curse theology. Look through this microscope, she told the head healer, pointing to a slide containing samples from an infected warrior. Those small organisms are what's causing the disease, not a curse from your great hunter. The healer reluctantly peered through the lens, then jerked back as if burned. You trap spirits in your glass devices. This is forbidden magic. It's not magic, it's science. Elena sighed, growing tired of the repetitive argument. Those spirits are bacteria, single-celled organisms that multiply in the body and cause disease. The antibiotics kill them. That's why your warriors are recovering. The debate might have continued indefinitely, if not for the undeniable results. Warriors who received Elena's treatment recovered. Those who insisted on traditional healing continued to deteriorate until they finally relented and accepted the antibiotics. By the end of the first week, Elena had treated over 200 Cathara warriors, including 3 brood leaders and dozens of high-ranking commanders. The impact on Cathara society was profound and immediate. Morak, Star's second commander, approached Elena as she was preparing another batch of antibiotics. Human Dr. Vasquez, I have been instructed to provide you with anything you require. The brood leaders are most pleased with your healing. Elena glanced up from her work. I need more reliable equipment. This improvised lab is barely adequate, and I need to establish proper infection control protocols throughout the fleet. The way your warriors handle equipment and food is practically designed to spread bacteria. Morak tilted his massive head. You wish to change our ways? If you want to stop this infection from recurring, yes, Elena said bluntly. Your hunting parties need to carry medical kits. Your weapons and tools need proper sterilization. And for the love of science, you all need to wash your hands regularly. To her surprise, Morak didn't object. It shall be as you say. The brood leaders have decreed that your instructions regarding health matters are to be followed without question. Elena paused in her work, startled. Without question? That seems unlike your culture from what I've seen. Morak's expression was difficult to read, but his voice carried a note of reverence. You have accomplished what none of our kind could. You have defeated an enemy that our weapons could not touch. In the eyes of many, this makes you a greater hunter than even our most honored warriors. The implications slowly dawned on Elena. In their warrior culture, proving superior hunting or fighting skill was the path to authority. By hunting and defeating the bacteria that had eluded them, she had inadvertently established herself as worthy of respect, even leadership. This unexpected shift in status became even clearer when Star summoned her to a formal gathering of all 5 brood leaders, now orbiting the ship. The massive ceremonial chamber was filled with hundreds of Cathara warriors, arranged in strict, hierarchical formation. Star, now fully recovered, stood at the center of a raised platform. Elena was escorted to stand beside her, a position of honor that caused murmurs among the assembled warriors. The human doctor Elena Vasquez has conquered the wasting curse, Star announced, her powerful voice carrying throughout the chamber. Where our strongest warriors and most revered healers failed, she has triumphed. The Cathara owe her a blood debt that can never be repaid. Elena felt increasingly uncomfortable as she realized where this was heading. The Cathara operated on strict hierarchies based on strength and hunting prowess. In their eyes, she had proven herself superior by defeating an enemy they couldn't. From this day forward, Star continued, her word on matters of healing shall be law among all broods. Any warrior who defies her medical directives defies the will of the brood council itself. A roar of approval rose from most of the assembled warriors, though Elena noticed a section, primarily consisting of traditional healers and older warriors, remained silent, their postures radiating disapproval. Ktar stepped forward. The third brood acknowledges the human skill and accepts her authority in matters of healing. One by one, the other brood leaders made similar declarations, effectively elevating Elena to a position of unprecedented power for a non-Cathara. She tried to interject, to explain that she was simply applying basic medical science, but the ceremonial nature of the proceedings left no room for her objections. As the gathering dispersed, Zatar led Elena to a private chamber, where the 5 brood leaders assembled for more intimate discussion. You seem troubled, human healer, Mitar observed. Is our gratitude not pleasing to you? Elena chose her words carefully. I appreciate your respect for my medical knowledge, but I'm concerned about the level of authority you're granting me. I'm a biologist, not a political leader. Zetar made a gesture that the translator interpreted as amusement. Among the Cathara, there is no separation. The strongest lead in all matters. You have proven strongest against the wasting curse, so you lead in matters of health. But I'm not Cathara, Elena pointed out. I don't understand all your customs or needs, which is precisely why your leadership is necessary, Ktar said. Our traditions blinded us to the true nature of the curse. We need your outside perspective." Before Elena could respond, a warrior entered and knelt before the assembled leaders. "Forgive the interruption, but we have received urgent communications from 12 more broods. They have heard of the cure and request immediate audience." The brood leaders exchanged meaningful looks. "The news spreads faster than anticipated," Starr noted. "Soon, all 37 broods will converge here." 37? Elena's eyes widened. "There are that many Cathara fleets?" "The Cathara rule. 17 star systems," Mitar explained. "Each system hosts multiple broods. All will seek your healing now." The implications were staggering. Elena had inadvertently become the most sought-after individual in Cathara space, perhaps in the entire known galaxy. And with that recognition came power she had never sought. Over the next several days, more Cathara ships arrived, creating a vast armada around Star's flagship. Elena found herself working around the clock, examining patients, training Cathara assistants in basic medical procedures, and overseeing the production of antibiotics. The cultural impact spread beyond medical matters. When Elena insisted on proper sterilization of hunting weapons, entire Cathara hunting protocols were reorganized. When she required regular medical screenings for warriors, traditional deployment schedules were altered to accommodate her directives. Most surprisingly, the fearsome predators began coming to her with questions that had nothing to do with medicine. Human Dr. Vasquez, a commander, approached her one day. "We plan to raid the Veltai mining colony next cycle. Would you examine our tactical approach for potential health risks?" Elena looked up from her microscope, baffled. "Health risks? I'm not a military strategist." "But you understand invisible enemies better than any Cathara," the commander insisted, displaying a holographic map of the planned raid. "Your wisdom would be valued." Reluctantly, Elena reviewed the plan. "Well, these swamplands you're planning to cross are likely breeding grounds for all sorts of pathogens. Without proper protective measures, your warriors could contract any number of diseases." The commander immediately bowed. "The raid will be redirected to avoid the swamplands, as you advise." This pattern repeated itself with increasing frequency. Cathara commanders sought her opinion on everything from ship ventilation systems to food preparation techniques, all under the guise of health concerns. But Elena began to suspect they were simply deferring to her judgment in general, treating her as an oracle whose wisdom extended far beyond medicine. The political ramifications extended beyond Cathara society. Representatives from various planetary governments, former tribute payers to the Cathara, requested audiences with Elena, hoping to understand how a human had seemingly tamed the galaxy's most feared predators. A dignified official from the Gorch Empire was the first to secure a meeting. "Dr. Vasquez," he began, his translator rendering his clicking speech into standard. "The Gorch have paid tribute to the Cathara for 3 centuries. Yet now, we hear that these fearsome warriors bow to a human biologist. Is this true?" Elena sighed. "I treated a bacterial infection that was affecting their population. They're grateful, that's all. I haven't tamed anyone." The Gorch diplomat's compound eyes blinked rapidly. "Yet brood leader Zatar's fleet canceled their scheduled tribute collection from our outer colonies. When questioned, they stated they were prioritizing medical protocols as directed by the human healer. If this is not control, what is it? Similar encounters followed. A Veltai Confederacy ambassador, a Zithian representative, and diplomats from a dozen other species all sought confirmation of what seemed impossible, that the dreaded Cathara now obeyed a human woman. The situation came to a head when the Supreme Brood Leader, the highest authority among all Cathara, summoned a grand council of all brood leaders. Elena was required to attend, despite her protests that her presence at such a political gathering was inappropriate. The Grand Council convened in an ancient Cathara temple ship, a massive vessel that dwarfed even the largest warships. Hundreds of brood leaders and their senior commanders gathered in a vast amphitheater, with Elena escorted to a central position before the Supreme Leader's elevated throne. The Supreme Leader was ancient by Cathera standards. Her scales dulled with age, but her eyes sharp with predatory intelligence. She studied Elena for long moments before speaking. "Human healer." Her voice rumbled through the translator. "Your actions have sent shockwaves through our society. The wasting curse that has claimed our warriors for generations now retreats before your science." She pronounced the word as if it were foreign to her tongue. "Some hail you as a savior. Others whisper that you weaken us by replacing our traditions with human ways." A murmur ran through the assembled Cathara, revealing the divisions Elena had sensed brewing. Traditionalists versus reformers, with her unwittingly at the center of the conflict. "I'm just a scientist," Elena said, her voice steady despite the intimidating audience. "The bacteria causing your people's illness existed whether you believed in curses or germs. The antibiotics worked because they killed those bacteria, not because of any special power I possess." The Supreme Leader leaned forward. "Yet now my brood leaders delay hunts to implement your hand-washing protocols. Warriors refuse to deploy without your medical kits. Ship captains alter course to avoid regions you deem potentially infectious. Is this not power, human?" Elena hesitated. She couldn't deny the influence she had inadvertently accumulated. "It's not power I sought or want. I'm a researcher, not a leader. I just want to help your people avoid disease, then return to my own work." Zistar stepped forward from among the assembled leaders. "Supreme One, I stand as witness to the human's healing power. When I lay dying, abandoned by our traditional healers, she restored me with her science. The seventh brood owes her our loyalty, as do all who have been cured." The head healer, who had accompanied the Supreme Leader, moved to oppose. "This human mocks our sacred traditions. She calls our ancient wisdom superstition and demands we abandon the ways of our ancestors. She weakens us with her soft human practices." The debate exploded among the assembled Cathara. Battle lines were clearly drawn between those who had benefited from Elena's treatments and those who saw her influence as a threat to Cathara traditions. At several points, warriors seemed on the verge of physical confrontation, hands moving to weapons before being restrained by their commanders. The Supreme Leader silenced the chaos with a thunderous roar. "Enough! The question before us is clear. Do we embrace the humans' healing methods and the changes they bring, or do we reject them and return to our traditional ways?" A tense silence fell over the assembly. Elena realized she was witnessing a pivotal moment in Cathara history, a species-wide debate between tradition and innovation, triggered by her simple application of basic medical science. Ztar broke the silence. "Supreme One, I propose a middle path. Let the human establish a new healing core within our society. Those who wish to learn her methods may do so. Those who prefer traditional ways may continue them. Let results determine which path prevails." The proposal sparked another round of heated debate. Elena found herself thrust into the role of diplomat, trying to explain how scientific medicine could coexist with cultural traditions without completely dismissing the latter's importance. "Your healing rituals have cultural and psychological value," she explained to the assembled leaders. "They provide comfort and maintain your connection to your history. They can exist alongside evidence-based medical treatments. It doesn't have to be one or the other." After hours of debate, the Supreme Leader raised her hand for silence. "I have heard enough. The humans' methods have proven effective where our traditions failed. This cannot be denied. Yet I also hear the valid concerns of those who fear losing our Cathara identity." She rose to her full height, towering over everyone present. "Therefore, I decree, the human doctor Elena Vasquez shall establish a medical council with authority throughout Cathara space. All broods must implement her basic health protocols. However, Traditional healing practices may continue alongside these new methods, not in place of them. The compromise satisfied neither extreme, but it gave Elena official standing to implement the changes necessary to combat the bacterial epidemic. More importantly, it began a process of cultural evolution within Cathara society, opening them to outside knowledge while preserving their core identity. In the days that followed, Elena found herself at the center of a massive reorganization of Cathara medical practices. She established training programs for Cathara medical personnel, designed standardized protocols for disease prevention, and created a communication network for tracking outbreaks across their territories. The impact extended far beyond health matters. As the Cathara began to question their traditional approach to medicine, they also began questioning other aspects of their society. Hunting practices, tribute collection, even their hierarchical structure came under scrutiny. Diplomatic representatives from throughout the 17 star systems watched in amazement as the fearsome Cathara, who had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, began evolving before their eyes. Trade negotiations that had previously consisted of "give us what we demand or die" transformed into more balanced discussions. A Veltai diplomat approached Elena after one such negotiation. "Dr. Vasquez, you have accomplished what 1,000 battle fleets could not. You have civilized the Cathara." Elena shook her head. "I've done no such thing. The Cathara were always civilized, just with different values and priorities than other species. All I did was introduce new information that they've chosen to incorporate into their existing culture." Nevertheless, her influence continued to grow. When the Zithian Confederation requested her mediation in a territorial dispute with the Cathara, she reluctantly agreed, finding herself negotiating peace terms between species that had been mortal enemies for generations. When a pandemic threatened the Gorch colonies, she coordinated a joint human-Cathara medical response, saving millions of lives and establishing unprecedented cooperation between former adversaries. Through it all, Elena maintained her identity as a scientist first. She established research facilities on STAR's flagship, continuing her original work on extremophile bacteria, while overseeing the broader medical transformation of Cathara society. Morak, who had become her chief assistant, found her in the laboratory late one cycle, studying cultures long after most of the ship had entered rest period. "Human Dr. Vasquez, the Supreme Brood Leader, has requested your presence at the inauguration of the new medical academy. Many wish to bestow upon you the title of Cathara Queen of Healing." Elena looked up from her microscope with a weary smile. "Please, thank the Supreme Leader, but I must decline the title. I'm not a queen or a leader. I'm a scientist who happened to be in the right place with the right knowledge at the right time." Morak tilted his head, a gesture he had adopted from humans. "You resist the power that comes to you naturally. This is unusual to Cathara understanding." "Power was never my goal," Elena explained. "Knowledge is. I want to understand the universe, not rule it." "Yet you have transformed our society more thoroughly than any conqueror," Morak observed. "Before you, we measured strength by the ability to kill. Now, we also recognize the strength in healing." Elena considered this. "Perhaps that's the real cure I brought, not just for the bacterial infection, but for the cultural isolation that prevented you from learning from other species." In the months that followed, Elena gradually shifted her role from direct leadership to advisory status. She established a mixed council of traditional healers and scientifically trained Cathara medical officers, creating a system that could function without her constant oversight. When representatives from Earth finally arrived, having heard rumors of a human woman who somehow controlled the dreaded Cathara, they found not a conqueror or a queen, but a scientist eager to share her discoveries and return to her research. "The Terran Science Council requests your immediate return to Earth," the official informed her. "Your situation has created complex diplomatic implications. Elena shook her head. I'm not finished here. There's still so much to learn about Cathara physiology and the extremophile bacteria that evolved to infect them. And the medical training program needs at least another 6 months of supervision. Dr. Vasquez, the official said sternly, you've single-handedly altered the power dynamics of 17 star systems. The council insists you return to provide a full briefing. Zdar, who had accompanied Elena to the meeting, stepped forward menacingly. The human healer remains under Cathara protection. She will leave when she chooses, not when your council demands. Elena placed a restraining hand on Zdar's arm, a gesture that would have been unthinkable months earlier. I appreciate the protection, but I make my own decisions. She turned to the Earth official. Tell the council I'll return when my work here is complete. They're welcome to send scientific personnel to collaborate with us in the meantime. The official departed, clearly unsettled by the dynamic between Elena and the fearsome Cathara leader. They fear you have become Cathara, Zdar observed after the human delegation had left. Elena laughed. And you feared I was making the Cathara become human? Neither is true. We're just learning from each other. On the final day of her first year among the Cathara, Elena stood on the observation deck of the Curiosity, which had been refitted with advanced technology and now served as her personal research vessel. Through the viewport, she could see dozens of Cathara ships arranged in ceremonial formation, an honor guard for her official installation as chief medical advisor to the Cathara broods. Morak stood beside her, now officially designated as liaison between Elena and the Brood Council. The ceremony awaits. Human Dr. Vasquez. All 37 brood leaders have assembled. Elena nodded, adjusting the formal attire that had been custom-made for her, a blend of traditional Cathara ceremonial design adapted to human proportions. I'm still not comfortable with all this pomp. I just treated an infection. You did more, Morak said quietly. You showed us that strength can heal as well as harm. That knowledge can be as powerful as weapons. That diversity can bring wisdom rather than weakness. He hesitated, then added, You have made us question what it truly means to be apex predators. Elena smiled at the massive warrior who had become something approaching a friend. And you've taught me that adaptability is the true mark of an advanced species. The Cathara could have rejected my help, clung to tradition, and continued suffering. Instead, you chose to evolve. Together, they walked toward the shuttle bay, where a delegation of Cathara warriors waited to escort her to the ceremony. As they moved through the corridors of the ship, once a simple research vessel, now a symbol of unprecedented cooperation between species, Elena reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. She had come seeking knowledge about extremophile bacteria and had ended up transforming an entire civilization. She had been captured as a potential prey species and had become revered as a healer. She had never sought power, yet now found herself with influence extending across 17 star systems. And it had all begun with a simple antibiotic injection. As they reached the shuttle bay, Elena paused and looked up at Morak. After the ceremony, I want to show you something in the lab. I've isolated a new extremophile strain from the ventilation system. I think it might hold the key to preventing future infections like the one that affected Zdar. Morak bowed his massive head. As always, human Dr. Vasquez, we follow where your science leads. Elena stepped into the shuttle, ready to accept her new role, not as a conqueror or a queen, but as a bridge between worlds. Behind her, the stars stretched out across the viewport, no longer divided into predator and prey territories, but united by the universal language of science and the unexpected power of healing.